What's up, YouTube? Welcome back, and welcome to the Reloading Room. We're going to talk about the Hornady AP Progressive Lock-and-Load Press today. This is kind of a deviation from our normal style of videos. We don't get to come into the Reloading Room very often, but today I just want to tell you about this machine. It's a budget option that's out there. A lot of you have seen it, see it on sale a lot. Comes in different packages. Sometimes there's a little extra stuff. Usually there's just the bare bones minimum base one that you can actually find for about between 450 and 650 banana leaves usually. This one I definitely got on sale, and it's been a good machine for the most part. It's run thousands and thousands of rounds of multiple different calibers. I have a stack behind me that I'll show you here in a second of all these different calibers I run through it, and I put it through its paces. It's pretty darn good, like I said. However, it has some wonkiness to it. I'm not sure if it's really made to stand up for the type of use or maybe abuse, I don't know what you really want to call it, of the thousands and thousands of rounds. Maybe if you were going to stick to one caliber, but let me show you a few things that are wonky about this machine, things that make me nuts, and that way you have an informed decision, because I truly do have a lot of experience with this machine. I've had it for quite a number of years now, and quite a lot of arm pulls on this thing, and I think I have a few things that are worth sharing. So first we got to talk about the priming system. Every new bullet or every reconstructed bullet needs a primer. And this primer tube here is the priming system. There's a little stick to hold your stack of primers down. I'll show you really quick. The way you get this loaded up, and a lot of other loaders like it, is you get one of these loading sticks, you fill up the 100 primers into the stick, you flip the stick upside down, then you're going to come over here to the priming tube, and you are going to pull the pin. They're going to fall down where they're supposed to go, hopefully. And there you go. You would have loaded 100 in there. And that's all well and good when things work all well and good. Notice there's duct tape residue on here and duct tape. That's because a lot of times this thing wants to pop up on you, and you definitely have to keep this down. An annoyance. If this inner tube comes up, the primers get wonky down at the bottom. Then when they get jammed up at the bottom, they don't want to feed. Now the way it works, if you look in here, there's going to be a little post, and that's what pushes your primer up into your primer pocket. Every time you index this all the way down, it pushes the primer up into the pocket, and then when you lift up a stroke, it's going to put another one in there. It follows an arm, and then it drags this slide backwards, picks up a primer. And then, as I said, if you push all the way down, that's what inserts it into a case, an empty case, or an empty primer case, pocket. Let me get my words straight. So this doesn't always work that great. I keep dry lube on it, but let me tell you something. This thing with any debris in here can be a total pain in the butt. This tube itself can just do weird things. You wouldn't think that a straight tube can flip primers upside down, but it really can. And it all has to do with this inner tube right here, sometime not settling down properly at the bottom. So that's a very big annoyance. Now, another annoyance with this priming system is right back here. You're going to see a guide bar. Camera guy is going to have to get in here somehow, and he's going to have to show you this bar. So this guide bar here is what this roller back here follows on to be able to pull that slide backwards as it goes up. So as it follows, it pulls it back, and then as it comes down, it lets it close again. And the whole thing indexes, it's ready to go again. Well, camera guy is going to come in from the top and show you here how this thing, for some reason, it doesn't like to stay in here. So on many indexes, it will go up and it will fly out like that. So you end up losing this piece out, and you have to constantly reset it. And it's not that hard to reset, but in the process of loading, I've learned that I have to keep my hand literally on top of this mechanism as I process my brass. If I don't push down on here, this thing pops out. Annoying, annoying, annoying. It doesn't happen all the time. It happens more on small primers, but trust me, it happens on all of them eventually. Now, anything progressive, anything that turns around, and the Hornady is no different, uses a shell plate, and that holds multiple shells at a time. So this is usually greased up on the bottom, and it sits down. You have different shell plates for different size shells. So this one is for the 45 auto and others, but for the most part, they sit down in there like that. You have to reattach them pretty simply. This one goes in with one bolt. However, this simple one bolt installation is a problem for this. So let me get this screwed on real quick. You put this basically like a metal spring rubber band around there. You have to index it one time, get your finger in there, and then it's finally ready to go. You torque it down, and boom. Usually if you put a shell in there, you can hold on to the shell and you can really get it torqued down. So here's my problem with this. It constantly loosens up. You would never want to Loctite that in there or put some extreme torque into it where you can't get it back out. But trust me, it does not like to stay in place. It is constantly loosening up. I have to check every 25 or 50 rounds and make sure that this thing is not loosening up unless I put a whole bunch of torque on it to where it's actually a pain in the butt to get out. So if you have one of these, watch this, because as soon as it loosens up, your spring gets trapped, and plus you get a little bit of wobble there. So any type of wobble takes away from your tight tolerances you're trying to make. All these things are set perfectly, and then you get a wobble underneath them. They're not exactly gonna, especially your seater, is not gonna exactly seat at the same depth maybe every time, or other things can happen with your other tools. And that's gonna lead me into my biggest just complaint in general about this machine. It's not consistent. I go for consistency when I make ammo. I don't wanna make crappy, what usually gets labeled as Bubba's reloads. I like to make good ammunition. I like to make my version of match grade ammunition sometimes. Trust me, this machine's not the machine for it unless you take all these tools out of here and basically use them one by one and make sure everything's always torqued down. When I say the torque down thing, I'm not joking. Every screw on this thing can come apart. It will eventually wiggle out. Even here on your mechanism for dropping powder, you better keep checking all these screws all the time. Otherwise, these things can separate. You just have to check everything all the time. I even have a broken screw here somewhere. I think this used to be a screw. Something broke out of there. I'm not even sure anymore. But you have to watch. Even this thing will fall apart on you. So with consistency making ammunition, you want every stroke to do the exact same thing. So when you, like example, you see this cedar die here is taped. Now, I learned to tape my cedar dies. I watched videos where a guy who was doing precision rifle stuff, he taped it, and it wasn't because he thought other people were going to mess with his machine. It's because he says everything mechanical eventually moves. I never forgot that. But especially with these Hornady dies and this Hornady machine, I don't know if it's the combination. I don't know if it's just natural or what, but here's not exactly the same dies I'm using, but Hornady together, this thing will move on you. You can tighten it down as much as you want to. I'll show you what the stems look like. The seating stems have this little rubber washer here, and you tighten them down. When you get them to the final position you want, you can tighten them down. That rubber washer always squishes out, and it's just, in my opinion, not a good design. It never stays where you put it. From round 100 to round, or 1 to 100 and 100 to 1000, you'll have all kinds of movement here. So you have to tighten it down as tight as you possibly can, lock that lock ring, and I go 2 different ways with electrical tape, as tight as I can get it, to try to keep this thing from moving. And still, even with the bottom plate screwed in properly, even with all these tools out of here so nothing else can make a difference, I still get big variances in my cartridge overall length. That annoys the crap out of me, because when I'm done making ammunition, I want to pull this out and I want every single one of them to measure the exact same length. And even if I sort my brass, use new brass, I sort my bullets, I do everything, I can't get this thing to seat consistently. Now, I'm not ruling out user error, and if somebody out there can please explain to me how I'm screwing something up to not get perfectly consistent seating depth, please let me know. It's just something that really aggravates me. I can get pretty close, but still enough to aggravate, especially when you're trying to make rifle ammunition. These things, I think, are made to pretty much pour out a lot of pistol ammunition. I would never run full progressive rifle on this. It just can't be done, in my opinion, consistently. I do a lot of 45 ACP, and it does well enough with that. But anything super precision, you got to keep an eye on everything, including this powder measure here. So you notice I have tape on this. This might not be so necessary to tape it, or it might not help it to tape it, but I also tape this because there are inconsistencies in the powder drop. Now, I understand it's a powder drop. It's not an electronic powder measure, but you can go, let's say I'm doing tight group for 45, and I do 4.5 grains of tight group. I will definitely throw anywhere from 4.3 to 4.6 if I'm not careful. Now, if I tighten it down and I tape it down and I really watch it, it usually settles at 4.5. But then after a couple hundred rounds, it'll just start throwing 4.6 consistently. And then I have to back it down to 4.5 again. And then before you know it, it'll be throwing 4.4 consistently. And I have to turn it up just a hair to get back to 4.5. Just another inconsistency in the system. Maybe it's an irrelevant crab of mine. I know, like I said, this isn't not an electronic powder measure. It just seems to move or creep or do something in the process of going through round after round. It's a 5-station press. The way I have these 5 stations set up right now currently for 45 ACP, I have the sizer deprimer, and then it's going to go to the reprimer down here when I push the downstroke. It comes over here to the expander, then it goes into the powder measure, then it's going to go into what's called a powder cop, and that, for anybody that doesn't know what a powder cop is it just measures the powder by pushing a little plunger on it, and it shows you, like, that would be my normal. You can move this rubber band. That would be my normal height for my 4.5 grains of tight group. If I were to double charge it, you would see it stack up like that. Or if I was to totally undercharge it, it would look like that. It's just another way to visually catch things. I do keep an LED light strip on here so I can visually check. I recommend visually checking every bullet. Then I have my seeder. Now over here, I have my crimper on a single stage, or whatever you call it, a one-armed Lee press. This is about the cheapest little one press you can get. And again, I tape things down and I make sure they're tight in there. All these things can move, but there's my crimp process. So I have 2 different pulls to get through an entire bullet making process or cartridge making process. Now I know that I choose to use a powder cop and that takes up one of those stations, so I could move my crimp die over here if I wanted to take away a pull. And also the thing is that it's not just 1 or 2 pulls for me, because I almost never just run the full progressive. That's a way to get inconsistencies. When you have these other tools in here, that creates some sort of an inconsistency between especially your resizer, in my opinion. So what I usually do is I usually run all the brass through the resizer and the expander, and I prime it in between. So then I have primed, sized, expanded cases. Then I run them all through again, powder, powder cop, and then I run them through the seeder. I bring them over here and I crimp them. And I still don't move the crimper over here because I just feel comfortable with the seeder being right here so I can place my bullets. And I'm not joking when I tell you that this machine works. That right there is enough die sets to do about 22 or 23 different cartridges or calibers. Like I said, a whole bunch of pulls, a whole bunch of canisters of this stuff. This thing's done a lot of work. So I'm not really knocking it, but I am definitely looking for a replacement. If you got any suggestions, please put them in the comment section of what your favorite progressive is. I know a lot of people will say Dylan right off the bat. They say buy once, cry once. However, I can't make that investment right now. Dylans are pretty expensive. I have run Dylans. They are pretty nice, at least when they're brand new. But the shell plates and the conversions and things like that, that's a little too much for me right now. I do a little bit too many different calibers. So I can't get a Dylan. But if anybody else has any other suggestions, I do like the Hornady system. Maybe I just need a new lock-and-load. That's another thing. Let me know, do you have a newer one that seems pretty consistent? Maybe I just got one that's a little bit weird. I don't really want to send it back to Hornady because I just don't like shipping anything back, but maybe it's time to go back for an overhaul. But no matter what, I just wanted to let you guys know that if you plan on just running thousands and thousands of rounds to this thing, it's not going to be the match grade ammo maker you think it's going to be without a lot of extra work. And it's really not meant to run full progressive rifle. I know it's advertised that it can do that, but to begin with, all your rifle brass needs to be checked for sizing. You need to do the deburring. If it's military brass, you need to get that primer pocket taken care of. There's way too many steps. It's not really going to work out that great on here. I have to go through multiple rotations through here to finally get it done. That's about all I've got. I know it probably sounds pretty amateurish. It sounds like I'm whining a lot, but I just wanted to show you some of the things that actually really annoy me about the machine now that I've had it for years and years. Hope you enjoyed these kind of videos. We will be doing more reloading videos from the reloading room. We just have to get it set up first. Thank you for watching this video, and until we see you next time, stay safe, have fun, and keep reloading.